On this episode of the Dr. Tina Show, I'm going solo and we are discussing all things high blood pressure. I have yet to meet a case of high blood pressure that I could not help course correct through lifestyle modifications and good old naturopathic medicine. This truly is not a drug deficiency problem. This really, I know that term gets thrown around a lot, but this truly is a lifestyle issue. And a recent study came out that I thought emphasized this beautifully. This was a very recent study, I believe October 2025. It's gotta put my glasses on, the very big font, I can kind of read still. Very high prevalence of non-optimally controlled traditional risk factors at the onset of cardiovascular disease. The background on this, recent studies suggest that coronary heart disease may frequently occur in the absence of traditional cardiovascular disease risk factors. However, it is unclear whether this could reflect missed clinical diagnoses or subthreshold non-optimal risk factor exposure preceding the coronary heart disease, and whether similar patterns are observed for heart failure or stroke. They looked at two groups of people, millions of people, and basically what they found was that coronary artery disease, stroke, heart attack, heart failure, none of these were just a fluke. In almost every case, people had at least one or more of these non-optimal risk factors. And we're going to talk about what those are, and then I'm going to tell you what you can do about it. You are tuned into the Dr. Tina Show with Dr. Tina Moore. For more, visit drtina.com. The conclusions of this study: in this binational study of two prospective cohorts, the presence of non-optimal levels of greater than or equal to 1 traditional risk factor was nearly universal before any kind of cardiovascular disease event. These results not only challenge claims that coronary heart disease events frequently occur without antecedent major risk factors, but also demonstrate that other cardiovascular disease events, including heart failure or stroke, rarely occur in the absence of non-optimal traditional risk factors, highlighting the importance of primordial prevention efforts. This is preventative medicine at its best. Finally, we get a study that shows us that lifestyle is the root cause for high blood pressure and heart disease. It's not just random. It is the number one leading cause of death in the United States. It surpasses, when COVID was at its height, cardiovascular disease still was 3 times higher death rates, but nobody wants to talk about it. And then on top of that, nobody really wants to talk about the fact that it is predominantly 100% lifestyle modification impacts. Like that's what fixes this. Now, I know there's lipidemia where it's familial, and some people have genetic propensity and a familial tendency to have really crazy high levels of blood lipids like cholesterol and LDL. But for the most part, so let's say 99% of cardiovascular disease is preventable. So is cancer. Most cancers are preventable too, and based on lifestyle modification. So we're going to talk about this. It has this nice little chart on it, and I'll make sure to put the link in the show notes. But basically, let's go through this. What are these non-optimal traditional risk factors? There's just 4 of them. It's pretty straightforward, and if you've been listening to the show for a while, you've probably heard me talk about this. Now, I do want to say I'm not judging anyone. You know what? I'm not judging anyone. If you're taking medication, I would say every single guy I've dated for the past 2 decades was probably needing some medication or on some medication for cardiovascular disease. This stuff is handed out like candy. I'm not a huge fan long-term of heart medication, but it is heresy to tell people to discontinue it. So one of my biggest joys in life as a licensed naturopathic doctor with a license to prescribe pharmaceuticals, I am able to take people off of their pharmaceuticals. If you are working with a health coach or a chiropractor who do not have prescribing rights, none of them have prescribing rights in any state, they cannot legally take you off your medication. But I will tell you, as your lifestyle improves, and I warn every patient of this, as you lose weight, as your lifestyle improves, as you build more muscle, as you get your metabolic health in check, a side effect is that your blood pressure medication or your heart medication, whatever you're on, is very likely going to get too high, and we're going to have to lower that. So you're going to have to work with your cardiologist or your general practitioner or me, and we get that dosage down because you'll start to get dizzy generally. People will start to get dizzy because they are doing so much better with all the lifestyle things, and they're getting the shit together, as I say, and they are starting to feel so much better, especially if you're on a GLP-1 and you're losing the weight and you're feeling good and all the things are going in the right direction. Very often that blood pressure medication in particular will need to be reassessed. That dose will need to be reassessed. So what are these risk factors? Blood pressure. So systolic above or equal to 120, diastolic above or equal to 80. I was taught 120 over 70 is optimal. That's what we're looking for. When I see anything between 70 and 80 on diastolic, I raise an eyebrow. When I see anything over 120 on systolic, I am kind of a stickler for this. I know that in the natural health space, a lot of people say blood pressure doesn't matter. I do think it matters. I do think lipids matter. I think all of these things do matter. I'm not as hardcore about it as some of these cardiologists. Everybody gets a statin and that's just the standard. I'm not that person either by any means. I really enjoy taking people off their statins if we can get them to that point. But I will say that blood pressure, I am a stickler for. Let's see. The next one was total cholesterol greater than or equal to 200. Now, this is a touchy one because as we age, our cholesterol naturally goes up. As we lose hormones, our sex steroid hormones are made out of cholesterol. So your testosterone and estrogens, for instance, as you age and your hormones decrease, your body will often endogenously produce more cholesterol in an attempt to make more hormones. Does that make sense? So your body's like, hey, we need more substrate because we need the hormones back. And so blood pressure will also creep up because the tubes that the blood is going through become floppier, right? They don't have the turgor they used to. So they become floppier. So it requires more or higher blood pressure to push through that floppier tube because as we age, everything gets floppy, right? Unfortunately, everything starts melting down, including our vasculature. So those are two factors to consider. But I will say that as people get older, they also undergo inflammaging. So we become more inflamed as we age. We become more insulin resistant. We become more metabolically compromised. That's just what happens. That's just how it goes. All of those things happen in fast forward when estrogen leaves the building in menopause. So these things are naturally occurring. This is why menopausal or perimenopausal women will all of a sudden see their lipids jump up. Like I normally rock a really low cholesterol, which is also not good. And I could never get it up to save my life. It was always quite low. Cardiologists loved it, but I don't love it. I don't need it down there. Too low of cholesterol. It's actually it's a U-shaped curve. We have multiple studies. And if you look at them all together, I have this great graph I used to share with patients. I came across the other day when I was packing to move, and it showed that it's this beautiful U-shaped curve. Your risk of death goes down significantly for all-cause mortality, all different kinds of reasons of death. Around 200, to be honest, 200 to 220, they had the lowest rates of death. When your cholesterol's low, you have a very high risk of dying, actually, from accidents, cancer, all kinds of things. When it's too high, obviously, that's a problem too. But most doctors will see 200 and they'll immediately put you on a statin. I'm not that girl, but according to this, having your total cholesterol above 200 or equal to puts you at, this is just one of the non-optimal risk factors. Fasting blood glucose over 100. That's definitely a red flag. I like to see fasting glucose no higher than 90, period. When most people are rocking it right around 100 or higher. And 120 is the magic cutoff for diabetes. So it's like you're pre-diabetic for a decade or two, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, welcome, now you have diabetes, and people act shocked. And I'm like, I've been telling you for 10 years that your blood glucose was elevated. That's all part of this metabolic syndrome. All of these are part of metabolic dysfunction. If a patient walks in my door and they're not strength training regularly and they're not being cognizant of what they're eating, they're stressed out and they have a belly on them, waist circumference is not on here, but that's it. Like if your waist circumference is over 35 for a woman, over 40 for a man in inches, you're not strength training multiple times a week and you have high blood pressure, I guarantee you're sitting in pre-diabetes. I just go get tested and check. because I'm not trying to scare anyone. I actually have a great resource for you. It's called Assess Your Metabolic Health. It's a free resource. It is the International Guidelines for Metabolic Syndrome. So it's designed for you to print it off, take it to your doctor, have a conversation and say, I want to get worked up for metabolic disease, because only 6% of US adults have healthy, intact cardiometabolic health. The rest are cardiometabolically compromised. Pretty scary. Only 6% of US adults. And that was 2018 data. So imagine that, I think, was released in 2021. So imagine what COVID did, all the being locked up forever and ever, especially if you're on the West Coast. So anyway, the last non-optimal traditional risk factor is past or current smoking. Past or current. So even past smokers. And it's crazy. The presence of cardiovascular disease, heart attack, heart failure, stroke, and total coronary vascular disease was almost 100% that these folks had at least one of these risk factors. So you're not a sitting duck just waiting for a heart attack to happen. Your heart attacks and my heart attacks and all the heart attacks of the world there's warnings. We just have to know what to look for. So go download that Assess Your Metabolic Health guide and get worked up for cardiometabolic health. It's nothing fancy. If you have your most recent labs, like you get a yearly lab and you just need to see the lipids, the cholesterol, the LDL, the HDL, triglycerides, if you have those handy and a tape measure, you can assess yourself and then have a conversation with your doctor. It's not a diagnostic tool. It's just the international guidelines so that you know what you're dealing with. Because I'll tell you from clinical experience, most adults have no idea. I would say that the vast majority of adults that came through my door all these years, when we would run those initial labs, they were all sitting with some kind of compromised, one of these risk factors were definitely checked off, if not more, but we were sitting with compromised cardiometabolic health. And that's how heart attacks happen. That's what leads to heart attacks. And we have it right here. So the one group they looked at was over 9,341,000 people aged 20 years or older. And the other group was almost 7,000 people aged 45 to 84 years. And they followed them for like 20 years or close to. And this is what they found. So to summarize this, if you have one of these four, blood pressure 120 over 80, higher than that, if you have total cholesterol over 200, if you have, or if you have fasting blood glucose equal to or over 100, or a past or current smoking history, there is a link. So it's worth noting. So what can you do? Because I don't mean to freak everybody out. What can we do? There's a lot we can do. So first of all, we have to get our metabolic health optimized. So go download that form, print it off, take it to your doctor, work through it. There's a video that goes with it. It's all free. Just go to drtina.com/metabolism. It's free. You can watch the video. You can download the sheet, print it off. It'll tell you where you're sitting. That's step one. Step two is keep an eye on your blood pressure. Most of the people I know with high blood pressure don't ever want to track their blood pressure because they say checking their blood pressure gives them high blood pressure. And that's really tough. I get it. But if I could have a readout, like a continuous glucose monitor almost, if I could look at someone's blood pressure throughout the day and see what's setting it off and see it correlate to emotions. I think our emotions really have a lot to do with a lot of this, actually. But dietary habits, body composition, huge. Your waist circumference is everything. It tells me everything I need to know. I have been yelled at by colleagues who have said, how dare you assume to know what somebody's metabolic health is just by looking at them. And I'm like, dude, I could tell you 100% what somebody's metabolic health is just by looking at them, because all you have to do is look at their waist circumference. An easier way to do this is to take your jeans, like whatever size pants you wear, and then half of that is the circumference of your neck. But that gets tricky. Just measure your waist. For women, it's 2 finger breadths above the belly button at the smallest part of the waist. For men, it's right at the belly button. If it's above 35 for women, you're in trouble. And if it's above 40 for men, you're in trouble and you got to work on that. That's it. You just got to work on it. There's no judgment here. We got to work on it. I actually saw something the other day suggesting that above 31 inches was for women was actually correlated to poor outcomes across the board. So that was even more stringent and tight parameters. And then now the guidelines for obesity, it used to just be BMI, but now they're taking into consideration waist circumference along with BMI. So they're, it's slow. I've known this for decades. My mentor taught it to me, but it's slow and people are coming around. And again, no judgment here. It's just know where you're at and get your shit together. That's the end of the day. So what does get your shit together mean? It means do all the things. I have a great book. It's free. I bet you guys didn't know I wrote a book. 2017, I think. It's free. It's called Pain Free and Strong. It actually covers everything you need to do. You can go to drtina.com/book and download it there. And it will give you, it's very easy read. It'll take you an evening and it'll give you everything you need to know there. But we're going to cover some of it today. So first and foremost, how we handle stress and anger and our cortisol is going to impact our cardiovascular health, period. I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole long conversation and we all handle it differently. I am like the queen of stress and cortisol, so I don't really have room to talk, but I will tell you that people who are stressed the F out have a much higher correlation to cardiovascular outcomes that are poor. Being angry can literally trigger a heart attack. There was a study I looked at years ago where folks went into the gym. If they went into the gym to work out and they were angry, their risk of heart attack skyrocketed. If you go shovel snow in the winter because of the cold, your risk of heart attack increases. All kinds of things. But point is there's not just one thing. We have to get our stress response under control. How do we do that? Pick your battles. Learn to pick your battles. And I have found the easiest way to do that is, truthfully for me, is to pray. I just give it to God and I pray because it's just not my issue. One of my colleagues texted me the other day all upset about something with someone else. And I was like, this is none of our business and none of our concern. So I don't care. Let them go do whatever they're going to do and get in trouble doing whatever it is they're going to do. But just talking about it is just gossip at that point, right? So not my issue. Give it to God. Let God have it. If you seek vengeance because you were wronged, give it to God. Just give it to God and pray to Jesus for grace and let it go. Meditation helps. Exercise clearly helps us mitigate our cortisol, getting adequate sleep. But that's tough when you're like, right now I'm moving. I'm literally moving in a few days. This is the last podcast I'm going to record on this set for God knows how long, maybe ever. And I have been stressed, really stressed because I got a lot going on. And it's impacted my sleep terribly. I'm having terrible bouts of insomnia in the middle of the night, and I know it's just cortisol and it's stress. And so we have to mitigate that, right? So walking, exercise, breathing, there's breathing practices you can do. Just hugging the people you love, stopping and pausing, laying down and taking a break to close your eyes when you're feeling overwhelmed and just giving yourself a minute to breathe. Getting off the internet has really been helpful. Getting out of other people's business. We too often as humans, we worry about everybody else's business but our own. So that's just my advice. I am not the expert in how to lower cortisol naturally, but those are some tools. Number 2 is we have to address the elephant in the room, which is obesity is not good for your cardiovascular system, period. So weight loss is critical if you want your blood pressure to come down. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I've seen lots and lots of young folks or younger folks who were carrying around a lot of excess adiposity and they were just fine. Their labs looked great. Everything was fine until it wasn't. I also see middle-aged folks, those Gen Xers, now that we're getting into the 50s, I'm in my 50s now, but when I was in my 40s and I was running a big booming practice and seeing 1 million patients, the lifestyle that we had does not go well. All of a sudden, it's just not going well. Like everything's fine until it's not, right? Everything's great on labs until it's not. And once that until it's not thing happens, then we start having a problem. People hopefully start paying attention. But the idea is we don't have to get there. Or if we do get there, it's so subtle that we're like, okay, I got to pull back the reins and clean this up. So your alcohol intake matters a lot, especially as we get older. Your hormonal status matters a lot. You will become more insulin resistant and you will have a potential increased risk for cardiovascular disease and other things when your estrogen leaves the building. So we have the data on this. I'm not saying HRT is in everyone's cards, but consider this. This is an important factor. For men, your testosterone starts to wane. We start to see blood sugar dysregulation, type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, all of the same things women are going through midlife. It's a midlife shift in hormones. We're all going to deal with it if we live that long, and that is a blessing to be able to live that long. So let's make sure that we, keep tabs. I would highly encourage annual labs at the very least, once a year. And it doesn't have to, there's a whole bunch of fancy lab markers I love to run. I'm not going to talk about that here, but at the very basics, you can use that Assess Your Metabolic Health freebie that I offered you, drchena.com/metabolism, and you can keep tabs every year on how you're doing. And the simplest thing to do is keep a tape measure next to your mirror or wherever your dressing area is and check your waist circumference. I check my waist circumference like every week. And I have for years and years and years. I have the same belt. I've used the same belt for decades. That's another big marker. So you got to keep it tight. You got to keep my mentor always said that. He's like, keep that waist circumference tight. It's not a judgment. It's not vanity. It's your cardiovascular health. It's your brain. And here's the other thing. If your cardiovascular system is being impacted, I guarantee your brain's being impacted. It's vascular, right? And so that's what people don't think about when we think about Alzheimer's or dementia. A lot of this is driven by alterations that are not favorable in our cardiovascular system first. They're predicated by that. And then all of a sudden, next thing we know, we've got that or cognitive issues. So, and if you start to have cognitive issues, if you're in your mid 40s and you're in perimenopause, you could be younger, you could be older. If you start to have cognitive issues, I would dare say that cognitive issue changes were the very first sign for me that my hormones were needing some attention. It could be low mood, it could be depression, it could be apathy, it could be all kinds of things, but if it was the inability to do multiple things at a time. I used to just be like a multitasking expert. I could just like have all the plates in the air. My ADHD was my superpower until the hormonal shift started. And then it was like, what is going on? My team was getting aggravated with me because they're like, I thought we already covered this. We already talked about this. Why do I have to keep reminding you? So it's not just walking in a room and forgetting why you went in there. I don't have that problem. I was getting super depressed and super flat affect. My stress was through the roof. So that was not helping. This was like back during when I was taking on the censorship industrial complex, which is still alive and well today, by the way. But it's the little subtle things, right? So pay attention to your brain, and which means pay attention to your cardiovascular system. So we covered that. Our mental outlook, our mood, all of those things are going to impact us. Our adiposity level is going to impact us. Our muscle mass level is going to impact us. You don't have to be a big gym bro bohunk, but you do need to have adequate muscle so your bones don't shatter if you fall. And we're all probably looking at, we're one bad step off a curb away from a hip fracture, ladies. So strength train. I've got multiple episodes about it. I'm so glad it's been popularized. It's finally catching on. I've been talking about this since way back in 2015, 2016, when I came online. I was saying, deadlift and eat steak, and it was not popular at the time. And I took a rash of heat. I tend to be early to concepts. And now everybody's talking about it. Thank God. So strength train. Then we have to look at dietary changes. I'm not going to give you any blanket recommendations because everybody's different. And some people swear up and down. I know doctors that swear up and down that they get everybody's cardiovascular health in tip-top shape through plant-based diet. I know the carnivores will say it's carnivore. I say just eat real food. I talk about it in the book. So if you want to know how I eat, go check it out in the book. If you really want to know how I eat in detail, I have a very inexpensive program called the Metabolic Revamp Toolkit. If you really want to dial this in, you can grab that on my website, or when you grab that Assess Your Metabolic Health freebie, it'll give you an opportunity to purchase that. It's a great course. It is very comprehensive with multiple PDFs and cheat sheets and toolkits. There's a video that goes with it, a masterclass. It'll explain all of this in more detail. Okay, so we've covered that. Now, sleep. I could do a whole podcast. I could do like a whole series of podcasts on sleep. Sleep is complicated. I'm telling you, if your sleep is off, the first place to look is your hormones. And I mean adrenal hormones. I mean, if you're stressed out of your mind, you're going to wake up in the middle of the night like I am lately. Like, ding, I'm awake. There's my cortisol. I feel like I'm being chased by a bear. Hello. That's cortisol. So I suggest adrenal support to my patients. I'm not telling you what to do, but I suggest adrenal support to my patients during the day. That helps mitigate cortisol surges at night. It's not always that clear cut, but that's a good place to start. Secondarily, I would say your progesterone would be the next box to check off, and then your estrogen. So not being able to get to sleep is a progesterone issue. Not being able to stay asleep is an estrogen issue. If you have anger, if you have emotions that are not processed, you, according to Chinese medicine and the circadian clocks, liver time is 3 to 5 a.m. So if you're waking up at 3 to 5 a.m., it could be a whole slew of things. Other people will say it's blood sugar. Some people will say try some protein before bed. Some people will say try some carbohydrate before bed. I say try both. Others will say don't eat anything before bed because then your insulin will get all screwed up, and your leptin signaling will get messed up. But we got to sleep. If you don't sleep, everything's a wreck. Your leptin's a wreck. Your insulin's a wreck. Your mind's a wreck. Everything's a wreck. A few nights of not sleeping well will put you into an insulin-resistant state. And I will tell you, all I want to eat right now is refined carbohydrates. Yes, it's raining, and yes, the weather is crappy. As I thank God I'm leaving. But the more my sleep is disrupted, the more I want to eat crackers and crunchy things and chips and salty things. And it's just what it is because I'm becoming more insulin resistant as the days go by. So I look forward to a full night of sleep here, hopefully soon. So sleep is everything. There's a whole chapter in the book about it. Again, Dr. Tina, drtyna.com/book. Go grab it. It's free. Okay. Beyond that, I would say some regular, now we can get into the zone 2, cardio, that whole discussion. I think Dr. Peter Attia does a really good job of that. For the average person, let's just say this, like at the bare minimum, try to get your steps. It's honestly somewhere between like 7 to 10,000 a day is the sweet spot. So I get that just wandering around my house. I'm pretty active though. So get your steps in. That's a non-negotiable. Get your steps in. I think most people really underestimate the amount of steps they're getting. If you got to put some kind of tracker on to check it out, a Fitbit, a Whoop, a Whoop, the Oura Ring, whatever you got to do to your phone, if you keep your phone on you, but you got to track your steps. I think that's critical just to know, like I go for a couple walks around the house with my dogs and I wander up and down the stairs all day here. We have 3 stories on this house. So I easily hit 7 to 10 easily. But it's going to be different at the new house. So I'm going to have to start tracking it over there. Otherwise, I'll end up sitting on my ass more than I think I am, and that's not good. As far as cardio goes, you can do the zone 2. You can do high interval intensity training. The literature, I do follow this literature pretty closely, you guys. It's kind of like my secret nerd obsession is that world. And it's kind of all over the place, to be honest with you. So Peter Attia really hangs his hat on zone 2. Others will say a couple high intensity interval training sessions a week are optimal. Others will say some kind of steady state cardio. I will leave it up to you because I dislike all of the above. So whatever gets me moving and gets a sweat on, I'm going to do that. But our cardiovascular health does matter. I used to think that you could just lift weights faster, but you really, some cardio mixed in. I would say the fittest, healthiest people I know strength train 2 to 3 times a week, and they go for runs on occasion. They go for little runs. They're not like huge runners. Some of them run more than not. But when I was in my best shape, I was running, I do a quick little 2-mile around my house. I hope to get back to that actually when I'm living somewhere where there's places to run. I live kind of in a mud field here when it's not, like 9 months of the year it's mud here. So I can't really get out there, or go out on the rural road and get hit by a truck. So I choose not to do that. So I'm looking forward to that, getting back to just, a little jog, a little kind of decompress your day. It's a nice thing to do when you get home from work and just to kind of like shake off the day and then, go take a shower and be present for your family. I want to add that decompression, moments of decompression. The first step in that is acknowledging that you need a decompression. And it's like a toddler when they get all worked up and you're like, dude, this kid needs a timeout. They just need to go rest quietly for a minute. Same thing for us guys. Same thing for adults. So acknowledging when you just need a timeout. You just need to go lay down for a minute. You need to have a rest. Maybe you go have some exercise. Maybe you have some food. Maybe you have a walk. I like to sit down every day and have a green tea, a matcha, warm with some Manuka honey, and just kind of spend a few minutes resting. So just knowing when it's time to like just off gas, right? And if you come home, especially men, the way that they're daily, so they have a daily clock, we have a monthly clock, women do. Men, when your husband comes home from work, don't hit him with a million things. Like, give him time to, my husband comes in from a hard day and he goes and takes a shower. He drops his dirty clothes because he's usually out on the farm working. He drops his clothes, he takes a shower. He takes as long as he wants in there. And then when he comes out, he's ready and he's good. There needs to be some food in there. If he's not properly fed, he's like the Tasmanian devil. And if he's dehydrated on top, which he tends to do, he's like, But I think it's the same for women. Like, we need to have transition periods in our day. And I think in American culture, we've lost these transition periods. But the transition from leaving work at work or leaving it in the driveway to coming in, this matters to your cardiovascular health, believe it or not. It really does. And so cortisol is really critical to learn to mitigate. And some people are just wired very differently. Some of us came out of the womb with cortisol issues, truly. Cortisol receptor issues because of stressed out mothers, or maybe there was an illness in the pregnancy. Genetics, epigenetics matter. If your grandfather fought in World War II, your propensity for anxiety is higher. Like, no kidding. In certain parts of the world, I forget over in Scandinavia which country it was, but they found epigenetically if that village of people had a higher risk for type 2 diabetes due to their participation in World War II. I mean, it's crazy what our ancestors are impacting our cardiovascular health, right? And then there's just straight up genetics, right? Some of us are wired hot, like some of us are fiery. I've got fiery Italian in me. Learning how to hold our tempers really matters, right? I recently had a situation arise with a young person in my life, and her boyfriend doesn't know how to control his temper. That's a maturity issue. It's not going to change until he decides it's a problem and he sits down and takes measures to control that. So again, like, how hot do you let yourself boil? And my husband runs hot. He gets really aggravated over, super calm guy, but he can get really aggravated over things super fast. And I'm like, it's so irrelevant. Why are you letting that bother you? People who get road rage, like, you have to learn to pick your battles. That is a huge one because it's going to impact your cortisol levels, and your cortisol is just, the minute that surges, it's like, you might as well just light a fire in your vasculature. Truly, just whew. So we got to be careful about that stuff. That's up to us. That's contingent on how we come to the table and how we control our emotions. I say this as a recovering cortisol addict. I say this as somebody who has a hot temper and I get fiery. You've seen me. You've seen it. People come at me and I clap back hard. I come back at them. I will not have it. I will not be disrespected by stupid people on the internet. But, I got to tell myself, like, this is not my battle. I don't need to get involved here. So something to consider there. Okay. I think a wonderful tool that has been shown in the data to lower blood pressure and to improve cardiovascular outcomes is community and pets. So find yourself a community. It's one of the main reasons I'm moving to Arizona, is so I can have community, because I really miss being around other humans. In Oregon, I'm out in a rural area, which makes it particularly hard. But more importantly, it's kind of like people went crazy here during COVID. It was a crazy, crazy place. So you never know who you're going to run into. And I'm not super social here. I'm excited to have community back in my life. That is a standalone risk factor for everything. All causes of mortality, death, is loneliness and isolation. And community is like the people who live the longest. It had nothing to do with anything else. No other health factor, but whether or not they had community. So that's a really important one. And then I think pets, we have study after study after study showing that pet owners have lower blood pressure and feel less loneliness and all the things. So I think everybody should have a pet. Big fan. Everybody should have a pet. I prefer dogs for lots of reasons, actually health reasons, but whatever floats your boat. I'm a big fan of pets. I think pets need people and people need pets. I think we, especially dogs, we evolved with dogs. We would not have evolved the way that we did without canines in our lives. And so as companions and hunting companions, and protection. So big fan of that. Plus they go out and they ground and they get all the negative ions and they bring them back in on their fur and they put them all over us. And they bring the biome. They keep the biome really, really diverse in our lives, because especially if you kiss your dogs like I do. I know people say, oh, you get parasites that way. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm kissing my dogs. I love my dog. I love kissing my dogs, especially that little Murphy. He's so cute and soft. All the dogs get kisses on their head every day. That's just this is how I roll. Haven't died yet, so I'm okay. I would say that is predominantly it. I would say that your stress, your activity level, your management of your cortisol, which I guess goes with stress, your sleep, and who you choose to surround yourself with. I will add, and I did a whole podcast about this, our non-communicable conditions are communicable, meaning if you live with somebody with cardiovascular disease and or type 2 diabetes and or obesity, your risk for developing those conditions is incredibly high because we share our biomes. We share the microbiomes that are of our bodies. We have the data on this. So we are contagious. Our conditions are contagious. It's not just lifestyle. People say, oh, it's the lifestyle that led to the cardiovascular disease that's contagious. Maybe, and I'm sure yes, right? But just who you surround yourself with matters. So I opt to seek out other healthy individuals. That's an important, and that's just an important, people who work on their health and their fitness. That is who I choose to spend time with. I'm not dissing people who don't, and I'm not judging. I don't care. But when I seek out friendships, especially close friendships, the people I choose to spend time with and around, we generally have that in common, because that to me is just a basic human standard of like giving a shit about yourself is taking care of your body that God gave you. God gave you one vessel, and this is a gift. This meat suit is a gift, and we have to take care of it. That's an inside job. That's up to each one of us as individuals, choosing what we will or won't put in our mouth. I know that there are socioeconomic factors and there's all kinds of factors to consider. I'm just talking about at the end of the day, if you got to give a shit about your body and your health. You just got to give a shit about yourself. Because when you don't, to me, it reflects that you don't give a shit about your family either. Which I know is not true, because I know so many of you are in really desperate places with your health and you desperately love your family, but I don't ever want to be a burden on my family, and that more than I already am, I suppose. And I don't want to have them to have to take care of me ever. I just, nothing frustrates me more than watching one spouse completely let themselves go and then age into elderly, and then suddenly the other spouse is a caretaker, because we know that caretakers within 1 year of caretaking for somebody develop diseases of their own, often cardiovascular disease. It's not great. And it's like, well, could that person have just tried to take better care of themselves? That's the question. And if so, when was that magic moment when the wheels fell off the car so much that there was no going back, So I say this with love, truly, and compassion, but God gave you this beautiful, beautiful, intricate, incredibly sophisticated vessel. Take care of it. It's yours. The beautiful heart that lives in your chest, inside that beautiful pericardium, that's a gift, the fact that it's still beating. So take care of it. God gave you the ability to be on this planet another morning. That is nothing to take lightly. So take care of it. All right, those are the basics. Those are the foundations, the non-negotiables. Oh, and stay hydrated. Stay hydrated. For real. That is this. My husband last night said, you are berating me about this because he was so dehydrated. And I was like, I'm so tired of telling you this. Your risk for heart disease and heart attack go up the more dehydrated you are. We lose strength and power and reaction time when we're dehydrated. So the risk of, like, he's on the farm lifting heavy stuff and working with heavy equipment, like the risk of injury is huge if he's walking around dehydrated. The muscles don't fire appropriately. The strength that he would come to expect to be there may not be there. The reaction times are slow. The brain is all shrunken up and dried out. The joints are all shrunken up and dried out. The risk for injury is higher. If you do injure yourself, you might injure it worse because the tissues are dehydrated. Like, do not neglect your hydration. That's just a basic. So if you're going to breathe air, you're going to drink water, get a water filter, get an air filter, please. That helps too. Toxicity. I'll throw that in there. These are some factors we can't control. Toxicity in cities with high pollution, cardiovascular disease rates are through the roof. It's very unfortunate. So if you can get an air filter, I think no matter where you live, I love Jasper. I'll put their link in there. It's my affiliate link. I would have a Jasper in every room. I would have a water filter. I'll put in my water filter favorite link in there too. And it's a reverse osmosis unit by AquaTrue. You can save if you use my code, if you use my links, both affiliate links there. That helps. We can't control that variable so much because there's going to be wildfires and we're going to get pollutants. And so being exposed to pollutants really increases your risks for cardiovascular events. And just know that women present differently with heart attack than men do. I'll do a whole separate episode about that another time. But I lost a relative recently, a woman, an aunt, to heart disease. I can't talk about it yet. She just had a, middle of the night heart attack, which is very common for women, is this sort of middle of the night heart attack, waking up feeling like you're having, heartburn. And next thing you know. So I'll approach that later. But these are the basics. So we can't control some variables. We can control others. We do the best we can. It's called risk mitigation. We got to do what we got to do. So the factors you can control them, and do the best you can with the others, and get your family involved, because a family that is an intact unit moving towards a goal is going to all have more success than just if one person decides to go rogue and get their shit together and nobody else is paying attention in the family. Your risk of backsliding is higher if you don't have the support of your loved ones around you. So get your peoples motivated to do the same, and let's work on decreasing cardiovascular disease across the board and lowering that blood pressure. So I'll link this study and you guys can see the proof of it. I hope this was helpful. If you guys like this kind of content, I would really love if you would head over to whatever podcast app you're listening to this on, or YouTube if you're watching the video. Please like, review, subscribe, comment, whatever it takes. Your a little bit of effort there, that addition makes a huge difference, and it allows more people to access this information. Everything I told you today was backed by science. None of this is woo-woo. We could talk supplements all day. That's a whole other conversation. I will say magnesium and fish oil are two of my favorites. Magnesium, fish oil, vitamin D, and zinc. I think everybody could benefit from those, but that's a nuanced conversation. I'm not going to give medical advice here. I just think reaching for the pill first is not the solution. The solution is getting your shit together. So grab my book, drtina.com/book. Grab my freebie, my free Assess Your Metabolic Health cheat sheet. It's at drtina.com/metabolism. Definitely just start those at the very least. Start with that. And let's get moving towards having a happy, healthy heart. I'll talk to you later. Thanks for listening to The Dr. Tina Show. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson and mixed by Mike Fry. Theme song is by John the Guilt. You can watch the full video version of this podcast inside the Spotify app or on YouTube. As always, you can email the podcast at podcast@drtina.com. That's DRTYNA. And if you like this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can also find all of my offerings on my website at drtina.com. For more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com. See you next time, and thanks for listening. This podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute the practices of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. I am a doctor, but I am not your doctor. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content on this podcast is intended not to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.